3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There you go. Happy?
Thank you. As you know, we are still meeting within a socially distanced environment, and I would encourage members to ensure discussion is focused so that the meeting is not prolonged. As seating in the Maze Hall tonight is restricted, only a limited numbers of officers have been able to attend. If a member wishes to speak, please can you raise your hand. If members' queries are unable to be answered tonight, officers will come back with any requested information. Members, you've all received open announcements, and I would like to welcome our new councillor, Councillor Ian Wilson. You're welcome, Ian. Thank you. Congratulations on your elevation. You've been in politics for quite a long time, and I look forward to working with you specifically within the Banbridge DEA. And I'd like to invite you to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your kind words of welcome. Just this evening, it's mixed emotions here, sitting in a chair that my good friend and late Councillor Junior McCrum occupied for many years. All the best tribute I can do for Junior is to continue his hard work and dedication and build on the legacy that he left in the Banbridge DEA area. And thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your welcome, and I look forward to working with everyone and all the councillors in the future. Thank you.
I'd also like to congratulate Councillor O'Hanlon and his wife Andrea on the birth of their son Connor on the 29th of July. Connor is also welcomed little brother for Annie and Lucy, so please, members of the SDLP, can you convey the Council's wishes to them? Agenda item 1, we have apologies from the Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor O'Hanlon, Councillor Nelson and Alderman Kennedy. Do we have any other apologies? Councillor Michael? Councillor McNally? Okay, thank you. Members, just to make you aware, if you hit the button, the green button on your mics, Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, Councillor Rankin as well. Lord Mayor, can I just welcome Ian as well tonight to our benches? As he alluded to, it was a very sad occasion when we lost Junior, but Ian has been a member of the party for a long time, even longer than me, I think, and knows quite a bit about politics, and I'm sure it'll be no time until he gets to know the mechanics of local government and how it works here. So he's a very welcome addition to the team, and I just want to welcome him along tonight and wish him and his wife and his family well as he takes up this role and represents the Banbridge DEA, and also pass on our party's congratulations as well to Councillor O'Hanlon, the birth of his son. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baxter. Due to the cleaning requirement for COVID-19, can I seek a proposed and seconder to take the Northern Ireland Housing Executive presentation before the council meetings? Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Cosby. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 4. Can I remind members that you need to follow the presentation on your own iPads. The presentation will be on the screen behind, but it may be difficult to be able to see from wherever you're sitting. Okay. Item 4.1 is a presentation from the Northern Ireland Housing Executive on Housing Investment Plan for the ABC Borough. With us we have Grania Long, you're very much welcome, Colin McQuillan, John McCartan and Mark Ingham. You're all very much welcome. Thank you very much for coming. So it's over to yourselves.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I'm very pleased to be here and with my colleagues, and delighted to be able to present to you on the Housing Executive's Housing Investment Plan. And I suppose, first of all, just to say how critical it is for us to be working directly with this council. Your community plan is really important to us in terms of ensuring that we deliver the right homes in the right places and indeed the right services for the people in this borough. So very pleased to be here, and obviously very happy to take questions as we go forward. I thought I'd start with the figures, and best for you to really see the year that we've had, and it has been an extraordinary year. Obviously, COVID-19 has affected so much of the work that we've done across the area. We have a stock of nearly 7,500 homes in the borough, and as the Strategic Housing Authority, but also as a landlord, our investment in the borough was just over 31 million in the 20 to 21 year, and that's spread across planned maintenance on our homes, and adaptations for people with disabilities, ground maintenance, response maintenance, and so on. Very large investment in new build, although of course we'd like that to be greater, and of course I'll come back to that. And you'll all be aware, obviously, of the Supporting People Fund, which supports people directly, provides housing support services and extremely important services to often very vulnerable people. So that's the year that was, and I'll cover some of that in a bit more detail. In terms of this financial year, you'll be pleased to see growth across a number of areas. Now, I haven't included in this figure the new build figures for the year, because as I say, that's the year that's coming, so we won't know the total amount of investment yet. So I'll be back hopefully with you next year to be able to confirm what we have spent. But what you will see is considerable growth, and I'm sure hopefully you'll be pleased to see that in our planned maintenance. So in other words, going from about 7 million last year to 16 million in planned maintenance and stock. So the residents of the local area will see the improvements there. It's not without challenge, as I'm sure you'll hear in a number of areas over the course of your work this year. Material costs in labour and supply shortages are driving up costs, but nevertheless we want to hold firm in our commitments to the borough in this year. And you'll also see that we are planning to increase our spend in response maintenance and across a number of areas this year. So I'm really hoping that your constituents will see the benefits of that now in the next few months. But importantly, it also means jobs for the local area, and it means investment in supply chain. So we're very keen that that work continues and that we can meet those demands in the area. I wanted to just briefly talk to you about our priorities for the year. We have a significant programme of work ahead, as announced by the Minister for Communities last year, to revitalise the Housing Executive, and I will come on to that. But the work that we do regionally across Northern Ireland to manage and maintain over 85,000 homes makes us the biggest landlord on these islands, and indeed further afield. So very large programme of work. But within that, some really big funding, as I said, for supporting people and delivering our homelessness strategy. And we will come back, no doubt, you will have questions for myself and my colleagues on homelessness, but it has been an extremely difficult year for people experiencing homelessness, and some very difficult decisions that we've had to take in terms of how we provide services to people who are homeless during a pandemic. So very happy to cover questions on that. We have a big programme, had a big programme regionally last year in terms of increasing the supply of social housing, and I'm pleased to say, despite the fact that there was a pandemic, we were able to exceed our targets in relation to both starts and completions, though I think we have more to do in this borough, so no doubt you'll want to talk to me about that. But I'm pleased to say we did manage to get significant investment in improvement of homes over the course of the year, and working with colleagues in this council, ensuring that we're contributing to community planning partnership priorities. So we spend a lot of time working directly with councils to ensure that your investment priorities for the area, that we can align our plans with those, and making sure we do that. We are in the process of developing a climate change, a sustainable development strategy for the Housing Executive, and critically within that is how we increase energy efficiency of our stock. Too many of our tenants living in fuel poverty, and I think we can do much more in terms of reducing carbon emissions, but also keeping people safe, dry and warm in their homes. And a key way to do that actually is through the investment that we will continue to make in our homes, because that does yield jobs, and we are very ambitious in terms of developing our apprenticeship scheme. Our planned maintenance programme will introduce social clauses into our contracts, so you will see more and more apprenticeships coming through within the Housing Executive, and that will have a knock-on effect. And you may be aware also that a huge amount of work is undertaken across the organisation to meet the requirements for housing benefit recipients, and again, happy to take any questions on that. Just very briefly to mention COVID-19 recovery, we were successful in securing an additional 10 million of funding from the department to support people who needed it in relation to homelessness and supporting people. But nevertheless, getting to a point where we could avert a major public health crisis amongst our homeless population has been really difficult. It's required a huge amount of work. We're not there yet, I have to say, every day. And in fact, just before coming in, we were discussing some further challenges ahead in terms of how we keep people safe. We are overly dependent on temporary accommodation. So the number of hostels, the number of units available in hostels has reduced because we've had to introduce social distancing. So as a result, we're using more and more temporary accommodation for longer periods that we would want to. And so we've had to move very fast. We've brought some of our properties back into use ourselves. But nevertheless, we are fighting an ongoing battle in terms of ensuring that people are safe, and that will continue, I think, for the foreseeable future. So it's not a good story to tell, I'm afraid. But the purpose of the Housing Investment Plan, we are statutorily required to appear before you, and happy to do so under the 1981 Housing Order. But really, it's about also being your partner, being a community planning partner. So ensuring that where we can, we will align our priorities with yours in the best interests of local communities. So we do the Housing Investment Plan work in partnership with colleagues across Council. It's involved a huge amount of discussion and collaboration, I'm glad to say, and I'm hoping that you will agree our plan reflects your community planning priorities, and we consider our role as a community planning partner to be extremely important. So just to remind you the number of homes we're talking about, just over 83,000 homes in the borough. A number of those, as I said, just over 7,000 are housing executive properties, and the breakdown, about 65% owner-occupied, 24% in the private rented sector, so quite a lot of growth there in the last number of years, and 11% in social housing. And from a social housing perspective, you'll see significant growth actually in waiting lists, and you will know this, I'm sure, from your own constituency work. Significant growth in applications to the waiting list, and also growth in the number of people in housing stress in the area. So that is coming forward now really at pace in the last number of years, but significantly since COVID. So just to give you the numbers in a bit more detail, just over 1,100 households presented as homeless in the last year, and that's an increase and a growing increase, and 53% of those applicants accepted as homeless. And as I said, significant numbers going now, presenting and being placed in temporary accommodation, which again, we do not want to be doing for prolonged periods. Temporary accommodation is only intended to be there as a temporary solution, and unfortunately, we're placing greater numbers of people for longer periods of time. So that works its way through into the numbers, and you can see the vast majority, a sizable proportion of people in housing stress across the borough are single people, and we are also very focused, obviously, on the need for accommodation for small families, for larger families, and that continues to be an issue for us. Population change, you'll see growth in terms of the number of older people in the area, and we need to respond to that then in the types of homes that are coming forward and the nature of that accommodation. We're very, very aware of that, and acutely aware of the need. So in terms of the population, 19% of the population is over 65 or will be over 65 by the end of this decade. So again, we really need to be ensuring that our focus is on the right type of accommodation and preparing for that change in population. There is a gap between demand and supply, and I'm making the same point, I think, in every council area as we present. So we have, I think it's fair to say, we have to do much, much more to ensure new social housing is coming forward, but actually something has to give, because I suspect my predecessor probably said the same thing to you, and I think across Northern Ireland we are seeing a structural gap between demand and supply for housing, and you know that as well as I do. So there's a number of major strategic programmes that need to be brought forward to ensure that we are building social housing at scale. And that takes me on to where we come from in terms of Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon in terms of new builds. So in 2021, we only completed 7 new homes in the area. So that's not good enough, and we have to do more. There is much better news coming down the line, but obviously COVID-19 had a major impact on the number of completions. However, we do have 151 new social homes on site. And in fact, I've been visiting some of them more recently in Armagh, Arc Housing, a very good scheme just commencing. So there is a stronger pipeline, I'm pleased to say, and that's coming forward. And we have identified 646 new social homes needed over the next 5 years, and you can see 159 of those are currently programmed. But as I say, big challenges ahead to make sure that we are meeting need in the area, and I will come on to that further. In terms of the local office, my colleagues are here and will answer some of the any questions that you have. But we are, as you can imagine, dealing with increasingly vulnerable clientele. I think everything I've just told you shows the number of the levels of vulnerability in the area. We're certainly responding to the impacts of welfare reform and universal credit, so we're seeing that in a very practical way in terms of the need to ensure income maximisation, and working very hard to find housing solutions for people in need, and providing those housing solutions as housing stress increases. Just to reiterate the points I've been making around ensuring that what we're doing is aligned with your community plan. A number of my colleagues working very closely with officers across council, both in terms of the connected review, the place shaping plan, our teams, our place shapers working very closely with yours, and also then we were working closely together on participatory budgeting, which is a really unique project actually, and something that's very exciting to see happening in practice. And we were one of 16 community planning partners involved in that project, so really benefited ourselves from working alongside you in that work. In terms of next steps on the plan, on the housing investment plan, we will continue to provide updates to you on a regular basis, on an annual basis, and certainly happy to do so on a regular basis. We ensure that our plan, our investment plan, is aligned with yours, as I've said, and ensuring that across the borough we're meeting where we can, we're meeting need as quickly as we can. Just before I finish, I wanted to mention revitalisation, which is a major programme announced by the Minister for Communities in November. You will be aware that her intention and the intention of her department is to enable the Housing Executive to borrow, and to enable us to do that for two reasons. First of all, to fund investment, and we have a major need for investment in our existing stock, some of which I've touched on already, but importantly to enable us to build. I talked about a structural gap between demand and supply in housing, and something has to give. We need new levers to bring forward social housing supply, and certainly the Housing Executive wants to be in a position to do that. So working in partnership with the department, we are currently engaged in a number of pieces of work looking at how we would enable us to borrow, looking at the investment requirements that's needed across our stock, looking at options for borrowing. Ultimately, it'll be the Minister's decision the source of that borrowing and how we take that forward. But the immediate priority for the department is to prepare an outline business case in this mandate, so in the next number of months. So a very busy period, but nevertheless very focused on ensuring that whatever we come up with, both as models and options, has to have tenants at the core. So it has to have existing tenants and also those on the waiting list, very focused, a priority area of focus for us. So that's enough of me talking at you, and obviously we're happy to take questions and discuss further. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Gráinne, for that comprehensive presentation. I'm going to bring in Councillor Hockin and then Councillor Cosby.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the report. Very interesting reading, very comprehensive report. I think, first of all, I just want to put on record my thanks to yourself, John, and to your staff, specifically Jackie McIlernan. I know it has been a difficult period, the past couple of years especially, but always found you to be very responsive to inquiries, and you might not always get the answer you want, but to be fair, you've been very professional, very courteous, and I think, you really, really stand out. I just want to put on record as well that I welcome the movement around North Lurgan. Every single year since I've come on the council, I've kind of taken the opportunity to give everybody a bit of grief from the Housing Executive about the fact that North Lurgan sits atop the list of this borough year after year. We're getting closer to the point where it may not be the worst. So yeah, there has been progress made. There's a lot more work to do, obviously, around it, but I think we're moving towards that place. So the other point I wanted to ask specifically was around whether we have a derelict or empty homes strategy in this borough, because I think in and around North Lurgan, I've mentioned this before within the council context, but it might be an idea for the Housing Executive to maybe work with the associations and the council to identify derelict housing. So it can be a long process, obviously. We've seen it in Portadown and Lurgan and different places around getting land ownership and things like that. But there are derelict houses. There are houses where people are not paying rates because there's not even an owner, according to some areas that I've asked. But I think it might be an idea. If there's one in place, I would like to know about it. If there's not, is it something you could look at in the future? So thank you.
I'm happy to answer that question directly, and I'll pass over to Colin. And just to say, so I think your question was, I got a brief on North Lurgan and a very detailed one, so obviously they've been listening to you. And again, pleased to see, a programme now that's there and a lot more deliverables coming forward, and a number of units coming forward now into the programme. So we'll be watching that with interest, no doubt. On derelict homes and empty properties, we get asked that a lot, as you can imagine, across all the council areas, and we are very, very keen where we can to add to new supply. We do have a business case with the department currently on acquisitions to enable the housing executive to acquire properties that may either be formally our own or purchases that we could make in the wider stock. So I'm hoping that we will see a positive answer to that business case in due course. But Colin, you might want to add anything more detail.
Yeah, right. Just to say, in relation to an empty home strategy, the department launched about 7 or 8 years ago an initiative to look at empty homes. Significant difficulty in actually identifying the owners, and then the powers that are available to actually take them into ownership. It's never straightforward. We did push out, and there were new arrangements put in terms of rates on empty homes and that being pushed out and whatnot. But it doesn't seem to really, in Northern Ireland in particular, have taken any really. It hasn't taken off at all. And as far as I know, it is something there that is on the it's on the to-do list for the department to actually restart maybe an empty home strategy. But at the minute, it's not there. I do agree that there's a lot of empty homes in the borough that could actually be brought back into use and do seem to be falling into disrepair actually, and actually blighting in certain areas. Even in certain very affluent areas, you're seeing empty homes that seem to have been abandoned. So I think there's something in what you said.
Thank you very much. Is that happy enough, Councillor? Councillor Cosby?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and Grania, thank you. And can I just put on record as well, just my thanks to Mark and the team in Portadown for the work that they're doing on the ground. And I know Mark, anytime I raise an issue, is very responsive and comes with solutions as opposed to reasons why something can't be done. So I appreciate that very much so. And just also to welcome the work that is ongoing in the Corkery and Redmondville area around the kitchen bathroom schemes. The bathroom schemes completed in Clowney Park and the ECM scheme, Clowney Park, Brownstown. I know the residents have been waiting a long time on some of those schemes because of delays and whatnot, so that is very welcome. So appreciate that. But just in relation to the housing allocations, you've identified 640 needed over the next 5 years. I'm wondering, and I may have just missed it, but I'm actually going through your main report as well, just to see how, and I see in Appendix 2, you set out the social housing need from 20 to 25. And I'm wondering how that squares with the application list that you have, because there are just over 4,000 applications in the system, 2,367 of those in housing stress. So I'm not sure how 646 actually meets that. But also in terms of looking down at the schemes that are on site, the majority are certainly through housing associations. And I'd be interested to know what housing executive will be building and doing to respond to the needs in the area as well, with new builds and acquiring maybe vacant properties to bring them back into use. Thank you.
So just on housing need, I mean, the Strategic Housing Authority team spend a lot of time looking at housing need and measuring housing need in the area, and they will obviously look at applications and they look at the levels of housing stress and in putting together those numbers. They'll also look at our existing properties, our allocations, our annual allocations, and the way in which they measure need also includes backlog in the system and so on. So the 649 is not, it'll never be a direct correlation between the number of applicants in housing stress and the number that we feel are, and the number of homes that are needed. But nevertheless, that figure is a high number, and 649 does recognise the scale and the nature of need in the area, and it's a number that we will plan our when working with housing associations in terms of new build. That's the number that we work off, and that's the number that our place shaping teams work off. We also undertake a number of, and we're doing it across a number of parts of the borough, when we're looking at site identification studies and looking at where land is available. So we do that very proactively through our place shaping teams. On the new build side, the housing executive really wants to build, and we want to add to new supply, and we're not currently able to do so. So that's part of the work that we're now undertaking on revitalisation. As I said, that will take a number of years, and it's probably likely to be at least 2025 before we're in a position to do that, because there's a major piece of work ahead before we get there. So in the meantime, as I say, there are a number of steps that we would like to take to add to new supply and acquisition, acquiring stock that's currently, either vacant or either available on the market is something that we would really like to do and do proactively. So that business case that's currently with the department is a very important one, and I think that's what we want to take forward. So it's not ideal, but it will certainly get some additionality into the system, I suppose, from our perspective, as we move towards then more fundamental change.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cosby? Thank you very much. Councillor Barry, then Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to the panel, but also to the local team that we would work with on a weekly basis, if not in some cases daily. And we just pass on our gratitude and thanks to them for all of their help on various matters. In relation to the new bills, I would be keen to get, I don't expect you to give the answer to tonight, but even if you email or write to me in relation to, I know there was only 7 new social homes completed, but 151 sort of new social homes on site. I would like a breakdown of those. I'd also like a breakdown sort of with the future housing issues of the 646 over the next 5 years, and those 159 units programmed. Just like a breakdown of those, because those of us in rural areas always like to ensure that we're getting a fair piece of the pie. And it's okay in Portadown and Lurgan, but in places like Tandragee and Market Hill and places like that, it's 40 years since the last housing executive site was in Tandragee, for example, which is unacceptable, of course. So I would like to get a breakdown at some stage on the rationale as to how these particular sites are identified and what the plan is for the rural towns in the next 5 years. Because in all of those towns, we can look beyond those, and there's housing needs throughout the borough, not just in the urban towns. So I'm just raising that flag there tonight because I'd be very keen on a breakdown on this, but most importantly, how you've come to that rationale and what you are going to do in those rural areas in the 5 years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Do you want to come back there?
No, look, very, very happy to give you a detailed breakdown. Some of it's in front of me here, but I'm very happy to do that. So again, what I'll do is I'll write to you just to set out how we undertake those site identification studies, how we identify land, how that's brought forward, and also I'll give you the numbers in terms of the mix. I have to say, we're not building enough homes in rural areas, and that's very, very clear, and the numbers speak for themselves. And that's, again, I have to say, across Northern Ireland, we have a big piece of work ahead. We've just published a draft rural strategy, and we're clear in that we don't think that's good enough, so we have more to do. And I think people's expectations, actually, frankly, of the mix between rural and urban housing is changing, and changing in the right way. I'm sure you would agree. So, so very happy, and I will follow up with you on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Grania, could you make sure that comes to all the councillors or through Democratic Services, please? Because
I will do.
That was one of my questions.
Very good.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Savage, please.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and Grania, thank you very much for your presentation. Like other councillors, I'd like to thank Mark and John and the entire team in this area. They've been fantastic throughout the year. The staff are very responsive, and they're easy to deal with, unlike some departments. But my question, Grania, really is in terms of, you alluded to yourself, the 216 million in improvements and schemes throughout the year. There's going to be difficulties with costs, shortages and skills. Will there be any impact on schemes this year? Just generally, I'm not thinking of any specific schemes, and will that be communicated to tenants as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Grania.
Thank you. And can I just follow up on the other point Colin's just reminded me? There is a presentation, a virtual presentation on the rural strategy. My colleague Sinead will be doing that this Thursday. So again, we can circulate further information on that. But it's for councillors, so we can Sinead can brief you in more detail. So thank you for that. On the issue of investment and I suppose the issue of capacity, you're right. It is an area that is exercising us greatly, and I think a day doesn't go by when we don't have a meeting at senior levels within the Housing Executive on how we are going to deliver on our commitments this year. That's for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, our commitments are large, and they're rightly so. We should be ambitious in terms of what we want to invest locally, but we are very much struggling to ensure that our contractors have access to supply and to materials, and the cost of materials is increasing, and also our contract partners are all, some of them, struggling on labour, on ensuring that they have labour and skills. So I think we knew pre-COVID the construction industry faced a skills shortage anyway. I think that's worsened. And so I think, we have some significant challenges ahead. I don't want to be sitting here a year from now if I'm invited back saying to you that we weren't able to deliver on our programmes, but we are, it is a risk for the organisation. We're not different to other parts of the public sector, I think, that want to spend and want to invest this year. And it's no one wants to be in a situation where they actually have the money but don't have the people and the supply to deliver. So we're working very hard. Good contract management, really good relationships locally, an excellent DLO, I'm pleased to say, a direct labour organisation in this area. So that all puts us in good stead here, I think. So I'm optimistic in relation to this borough, but nevertheless, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't giving you a realistic assessment. I think we're going to struggle to deliver this year.
Thank you very much, Gráinne. Thank you, Councillor Savage. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I suppose before I start, I need to declare an interest because I'm the architect on this scheme in Ogle Street in Armagh, so the one you were referring to. So obviously we do work with Arc Housing and other housing associations on that type of thing. You did refer to, obviously, the housing executive. It was one of my questions. Have you got an aspiration to start building houses again? Because obviously that was the process before, and then obviously the associations have taken over. And that would be sort of, if you could sort of expand on that. I know you said 2025, but look, a wee bit of expansion on that. I suppose one thing that sort of concerns me is that, and I hope I'm picking this up wrong, but it seems to be your allocations are dropping, yet the crisis levels and the applicants are going up. So is that an indication that you're sort of fighting, an uphill battle here? That obviously numbers are going to continue to increase year in, year out. And if that is the case, what are you putting in place to obviously try and to alleviate that? I suppose, like anybody, I don't like to get parochial, and I do welcome the investment in existing buildings, especially environmentally. It's so important, obviously for energy conservation, etc. But I will refer to Woodford Place in Armagh, which again has not been invested in. I have no idea. I was in one of the flats and you could actually feel the air blowing through the windows. So where others are getting double glazing and solar panels on their roofs and new boilers, Woodford Place in Armagh has been neglected. Now I did, and I have to commend, I know John McAlevey used to be my go-to guy in Armagh, and as I say, he was great, and he said that it was on an investment list, but I would like a bit more detail when, because there's people living in those flats, and
Councillor Nicholson, your mic's knocked off. Is that you? Go ahead.
Sorry, don't know what that off was. But no, look, it's not acceptable at the minute that, obviously we're talking about improving homes to environmentally friendly, yet there's people living without proper sealed envelopes. So I suppose that's something I just wanted to bring to your attention tonight. The other thing is allotments. I get a lot of people contacting me about allotments because, like a lot of these developments, there's a lot of land left, unused, and I hope that the executive would encourage and help me if I bring groups forward to say, look, they want to have an allotment here, which again fits in with the whole sustainability and aspect. It creates a community cohesion as well, which is really important in some of the housing estate. So look, that's pretty much it. It's quite a lot there, but look, I'd welcome.
I think your microphone's trying to tell you. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Go ahead, Gráinne.
Yes, thank you. And yes, so on new build, I mean, again, as I said, very, very keen that the housing executive is able to build again. And I should say also, the process to get there will be complex because there are a number of issues that we have to deal with around what's our investment requirements. So what do we need to invest in our existing stock? What's our capacity to add to new supply? Because you can't switch the tap on, as a number of colleagues have said tonight already. It's been a number of years, decades in some cases, since we were building in local areas. So you'll certainly know capacity issues will be a challenge, but also what our plans are, and in other words, where would we build? And so while we have significant footprint, an 84,000 home landlord has significant land within our areas, you know, making sure that we build the right homes in the right places. So I suppose the time frame from here to 2025 is to ensure that we understand the investment requirement, that any change in legislation that's required to enable us to borrow, and whatever the nature of that borrowing will be, there's a big piece of work to do to get there, and we need to make sure that we're on a sustainable financial footing from day one. So when we're taking risk, we're taking the right kind of risk, and I talk all the time about every penny we spend is tenant income, it's rents. So we do that, and we spend it wisely, and so on. So I suspect we'll be back speaking much more about that. But the ambition to add to new supply is there, and it's not there in a bullish way. It's there because we know we need it. And just to say, we don't see ourselves replacing any of the output from housing associations. You've seen the figures. There's a gap, and I think no matter how hard we all work, it's going to be challenging to fill it. So I suppose I'll leave that there. On allocations, I'm going to ask Colm to speak a little bit about, and other colleagues, on allocations. But just to say, there's no question we have seen a reduction in homes coming forward in the last 18 months. You know, so the normal numbers that we would see of properties becoming void to enable us to fill them through allocations, that has slowed. So there are people who just simply haven't moved because of the pandemic. So that was always going to be a challenge for us. So so I'll skip forward onto the allotments and so on. I mean, our sustainable development strategy is ambitious, and you know, we are, you know, I'm very keen that we use our land, you know, for tree planting, for allotments, for sustainable drainage, for rewilding. We've a lot of work to do. So our board, in fact, this week is meeting to look at a first draft of that strategy. So we're very keen, and we're very happy to, where we can, to use, you know, land that is in the best interest of the local community for those reasons. But Colm and others, I might ask you just to touch on allocations on that.
On the allocations, sorry, I said it, alluded to it. I mean, this time last year, the government guidance was don't move, and indeed we had a significant reduction in the numbers of folk that normally would have moved because the government guidance, they didn't move, and indeed they couldn't move. There was nobody there to actually move them, or they couldn't buy stuff in shops to actually take up a new tenant. So we've seen a significant drop in the allocations, and many of those allocations would be by transfer, by the way. That all collapsed for the first 5-6 months of the financial year last year, so we've seen a massive drop. Unfortunately, the biggest reason why we gain an empty house is death. So people die on our properties, and that allows them to come on. That would take up nearly a third of all of our properties coming through. Secondly, we have found it difficult, right up and post-Christmas, to actually get the turnaround of stock in terms of getting it ready. The COTs, the change of tenancies and whatnot, have been slowed up. That's been exacerbated to a certain extent with what was alluded to earlier in terms of the availability of materials and men to actually do the jobs. We have moved back into a mode there post-Christmas of offering a full response service, so we're back on board with that, and we're hoping that things will improve in that. But there was definitely a slowdown in that coming across, both by desire from people not wanting to move about, and secondly from ourselves actually trying to get the works done. There is a bit of a backlog. We have more voids now than we normally would have had. We were very lucky. We're still less than 1% of our stock is void. We keep a very close eye on that. We're looking at the trends in that. Locally, John and Mark can give you more detail on that. But the intention would be that we will push this out again in terms of that. Our normal relet time pre-COVID was around about 18 to 20 days. We're now sitting at around about 37 days, and you take weekends and stuff like that. That makes a big inroads in what, you know, the availability of properties. So we're working hard to bring that down. So we are. Maybe I'd ask Mark and John maybe talk about the Woodford Place flats. John?
Woodford Place is an area, yes, I'd be familiar with, and I've visited on a number of occasions. Certainly, if there's individual properties that need looked at in terms of issues around windproof and weatherproofing, we can look at them individually. What we're looking at it in its totality, and at this moment in time is going through an economic appraisal process, which will help guide and direct how we move forward in relation to it. I'm not sure whether it's John Mackley, he's actually moved to carrying out economic appraisals. I'm not sure whether John will be working on that one, but he would certainly be familiar with the issues around it. It's fairly well progressed at, and I would certainly hope that in the very near future, we will be in a position to start making some decisions around where we go and what direction we take in relation to Woodford Place.
Thank you very much. Happy enough, Councillor Nicholson? Do you want to come back?
Just one point in relation to Woodford Place. Sorry, I don't make you on it. Have you a time frame when we can expect this final sort of paper to be produced, or strategy of what you're going to do? And is it part of the place shaping of Armagh? Is it part of that? Because obviously it is in a location which is close to the jail, which is owned by the council, and also the city centre. And I suppose in relation to the overall kind of master plan of the area, I think it'd be useful if it was, sort of, that was taken into consideration somewhat. So thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Alderman Wilson.
Yep, thank you. And it was just if I could just brought your attention just to your annual update, and it's just regarding the cavity wall insulation issue. And I know back in 2017 there was a fair bit of research and report undertaken with professional involvement in that, but I'm just sort of a wee bit concerned to see that some 4 years later, I'm not sure if the actual final action plan has been brought forward, and I would welcome any additional information about that. What is a huge issue, and I know at the minute some of the buzzwords around climate change and what we can do, and I often see our government bodies maybe dropping the ball a wee bit in that regard, and we are asking people to remain in houses that maybe have inadequate cavity wall insulation, inadequate insulation generally, poor ventilation, poor windows, generally poor energy efficiency and economic efficiency for people. And we know already from people I'm dealing with that their budgets are stretched, and as we hit another winter, they're living in defective properties that a government body is overseeing. So I think it's important that we do get a real firm grip on that, because we have the argument, and this council has seen that argument now and again too, where industries are looked at as big players, but yet climate change affects everybody the same. So if we're asking a big industry to step up and carry a lot of the can, we need to ask our public bodies to do the same. And we need to see firm action to ensure that cavity walls are properly insulated, that the very limited resources people have isn't simply escaping out through our cavity walls, and they're living in cool conditions in the winter when they should be in relative warmth. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, on cavity wall installation and I suppose energy efficiency more generally, this is a huge issue, very challenging, as you've said, and but also I think a big opportunity. I suppose I'll start with the challenges just to update you on where we are in the action plan, because that was your specific question. We've now finished a very detailed consultation, having produced 2 major reports on cavity wall installation. So we know the scale of the challenge. We've gone out to public consultation. In fact, again, the board meeting I referred to this Wednesday will receive a full briefing to the board, with the intention that that action plan will now come back in detail, I think 2 months from now. So by the end of this year, we'll be in a position for that action plan to be signed off. I think it's really important also to state that on cavity wall, and again, you may well be very aware of this, but there's a sequencing that's required across a number of programmes of improvements to our housing stock. External cyclical maintenance needs to be done, and needs to be done well. You do that first before you put the cavity wall improvements in, because if you improve cavity wall without a watered ECM having been done, you're potentially putting it into a defective property. So in all of those instances, we want to make sure that we're getting the right sequence correct, and that's why we've specifically put in place a major planned maintenance programme now, which you saw in the slides tonight, across this borough for exactly that reason, and across more generally. So that work will be rolled out, and I expect will be in the tens of millions and much beyond that. So we're fully aware that that is going to be very expensive, but nevertheless, it's worthwhile for two reasons. First of all, ultimately to the tenant, we need to keep our tenants safe, warm and dry. They're the principles we work and live by as housing professionals. But equally to local communities, there is a local economic growth dividend there as well, and we take that very seriously too. More widely, I see the cavity wall insulation work as part of a number of strands to what is ultimately about making our homes energy efficient and transitioning to net zero. So not all of our homes that have cavity wall insulation issues are the same. We have a number of homes using, for example, no fines construction and other forms of construction that require a lot of work. So we've received funding from the European Regional Development Fund. We're match funding that. That will retrofit about 2,700 homes across Northern Ireland with significant retrofit to enable energy efficiency to be improved in those homes. So cavity wall is one piece. It's a very important piece, as you said, but there's a number of other pieces to the energy efficiency puzzle, all of which will require significant investment. So we're trying to get as much of that done, but as I said at the start, in the right sequence. I'm very happy to come back and talk further about that at any point.
Thank you very much, Grania. Happy enough, Alderman? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Toman now.
Hello. Yes, thanks very much, Chair. And my question is in relation to the current housing stock and your maintenance schemes in particular. And your maintenance schemes are important, to help revitalise your current homes, but we also need to revitalise the infrastructure around your current stock. And what I mean by that is in relation to car parking issues for housing executive tenants. So within the presentation, you mentioned about a strong focus on co-designing and engagement with your tenants and the wider community. So we'd just like to know what contribution and engagement will there be to car parking issues. And you talk about a partnership with the Department of Infrastructure. What partnership is there with the Department of Infrastructure when it comes to dealing with these issues? As population grows, these issues will soon need to be faced. We'll continue to fail in these residents time and time again, and we'll soon need to address these issues.
Thank you, Councillor Toman. Go ahead.
I'm probably going to hand some of this to Colm and others in relation to issues locally in relation to car parking. We do work very closely with the Department of Infrastructure, and they are a community planning partner. Obviously, we sit around the table with them on a regular basis in relation to getting the right balance and ensuring that we have, as I say, sufficient car parking spaces. But equally, one of the areas that we are working on with the department is on electric vehicle infrastructure. I mean, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done, and as a provider and a landlord with land, we certainly are looking for opportunities where we can to identify sites for electric vehicle infrastructure too. So there's, I mean, as a housing authority and a transport body, we're working very closely with the department on a number of issues. At the risk of sounding like I'm passing the buck, I might ask Colm or others to talk about car parking issues if there's anything they want to add.
It's on. No, it's on now. Weren't built for the amount of traffic that we actually have nowadays. Our norm is, and again, we, at one stage when I started in the house, like I said, we had 180,000 houses. We're down to around about 84, 85,000. Many of our states are populated. We are the minor landlord in many instances. If there's more than 50% in tenants in the state, we will look to partner up and put our money in to actually look after them. If it's less than 50%, we're saying, to whose benefit is it? And it's our rent payers that are actually paying the monies towards these works. So, I mean, that has been the rule of thumb. We have worked in the past where that number is actually exceeded, and we'll not be found wanting in doing it. We also have been involved in environmental works in the states there to actually help with laybys and stuff like that where we can. But it is a difficult one, because at the end of the day, the amount of money that actually has to go in is significant when you're looking at this, and quite difficult to plan through, especially if you're taking away people's gardens and footpaths and various other bits and pieces. And truth be told, it has been a bit of an issue for us for some time, insofar as it's seen as it'll do all right, but you're right, it won't do all right. It is starting to impact upon the lives of quite a few of the residents in some of these estates. But at the minute, we're sort of hamstrung. If it is the case there that we don't have, the right percentage of people, we cannot invest on our own monies into road infrastructure. We'll not be found wanting if other partners are prepared to actually do that in terms of the road service or whatever. So, I know what the sort of things that you're alluding to. Maybe John or Mark would have some comment on that.
Okay, yes, this is an issue right across the borough, and I'm sure every councillor here could come to yourselves with a list of where it would be very useful and very desirable. And we would apply a general rule of thumb of we would check that where a request comes in, the amount of housing executive stock still remaining in that target area. And generally, we work on the 50%, if it's still 50% rule, and that helps guide us, and that would be in conjunction with the road service policy and procedures. What we'll also do, as Colin alluded to there, we also try and facilitate and enable in curtilage parking where that's possible to do as well. So that's another strand to it. It can be unusual now to find areas that are fed through to us where we would have more than 50% of the stock, and usually it falls at that hurdle. Where it doesn't, there's other design considerations that have to be taken into consideration with the siting and design, the proximity to the target houses, layout dimensions, parking space numbers and all. So it's a complex area, and it's one I know that frustrates our tenants out there, and I know they make numerous representations through yourselves to our sales, but it's a difficult and a unfortunate perennial issue that is quite likely to continue.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come back, Councillor Truman?
Yes, John, just a quick question. Curtilage parking, does the criteria still match with that, with a 50%, or is there no criteria with the curtilage parking?
Yes, we still work on the 50% criteria for the target area. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Truman. Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to place on record my party's appreciation of the work of the housing executive employees, which is always of a high standard. So there are 2 points I want to raise. You sort of mentioned them, Grania. One, in terms of land acquisition. I know you said it's quite hard, quite frankly, to obtain land for social housing homes, particularly in areas where there is a housing need. There may be land there available for development. It may be zoned for development. Indeed, it may be owned by developers who want to develop it, but they want to develop solely for private residential use. I know in some regions in the UK and Scotland are particularly strong on this, that if there is an area with a strong need for social housing, the authorities there will condition that a certain percentage of dwellings for that area must be provided as social housing in order for the overall application to proceed. Is that something that you would like to see potentially more of employed by local authorities to potentially quota certain housing applications in areas of high social need, so that you're not constantly chasing that, you're able to have a longer term look at the things? And in particular, how can you include that in the thinking process in terms of the local development plan, which will be hopefully used as a strong place shaping tool for the next 15 to 20 years? So what would your thoughts be on that potentially if, as you mentioned, you're engaging with planning officials in this council, whether to get into their mindset that if an area, whether it's Lurgan or elsewhere, an application comes in and it is of high social housing need, that they're thinking, well, potentially should we place a quota in the number of houses that should be reserved for social development in order to improve this? So what would be your maybe thoughts on that? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Go ahead, Grania.
Thank you. And again, I suppose community planning as a concept came from Scotland. So, Scotland has, I think, much to teach us in relation to how we ensure that we use land in the public interest to ensure the right homes in the right places. I mean, I mentioned at the start, we take our role as a community planning partner very seriously, and the place shaping teams within the Housing Executive work very closely with the team here in Council in relation to local planning issues and the development of the local development plan. In other councils, we work actively also, and we're very clear, for example, with other councils where in our view, there ought to be a proportion set aside for social and affordable housing. And again, that's the view that we've taken, and we've taken that consistently. We're not consistent in terms of the proportion. We will set that out based on need, what the data tells us for social and affordable housing, and each council by council basis. So I won't talk about the proportion necessarily here, but certainly the principle of ensuring that a proportion of social and affordable housing is held aside, is something that we've strongly advised on at every council area in their local development plans. Colin, I don't know if you want to add to that.
This is not a new concept. I mean, it's been widely used. I mean, it hasn't been really. I think some of the councils here have actually adopted. I think Belfast may have adopted it, and some of the others are actually actively looking at it. That there has to be a set percentage of any new development set aside for not just social, but social and affordable. So that could be co-ownership or various other things. So, I mean, it's gathering momentum in Northern Ireland and around the councils. I would be very, very in favour of it. I think it's something that we can and should be actually doing. Mixed tenure seems to work best for lots and lots of folks for all sorts of reasons. So I'd be one that would be very keen to see that notion and motion approved.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lavery, happy enough? Alderman Spears.
Lord Mayor, just a couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to welcome the Housing Executive here on their annual visit. I know it's the first time for the new Chief Executive to be here. It's probably not her first time to be out in this part of the world, for she's a fairly travelled lady, but in any event, you're particularly welcome here. The question I want to ask is in relation to house sales and the house sales issue vis-a-vis the housing associations, which they didn't sell as many, and latterly I think they have stopped selling. And the Housing Executive, at one time, house sales was a very popular thing, and it had a major effect on raising the profile and indeed raising the standard in a lot of instances within housing executive states. Sadly, that is turning around the other way now. I find that a lot of these houses are now coming into the hands of private landlords and whatever, and they're not as well. I was in a state on Saturday night locally, and I must say I was disappointed to see the state of some of the houses because of the fact that they're not being managed in the way that I feel that should be. Maybe people that's in them are, their abilities is limited in what they can do themselves. So it's creating social problems within estates, and I know there is a policy, and I'm not sure how widely it has been implemented in terms of buyback. Now, some of these houses within estates are sold a lot cheaper per unit than you can build a new house currently. So there's an economic equation there that I think in terms of a social provision within areas and an opportunity to raise the standard within estates. I mean, the estate I was in the other night is locally. I'll fill you in later as regards some of the issues. I was in touch with the executive today about it and whatever. But there are issues that I think go to the wider issue of how we move forward in relation to house sales. and some small houses sold and flats sold within the places, and now the people find that there's conditions that they have to adhere to when the remainder of the flats are being upgraded by yourselves, and that signed the dotted line and didn't realise what they were signing, and now have to pick up a substantial bill. So there are issues there that I think are challenging and probably need some reflection. So that's all the point I want to make.
Thank you, Alderman. Go ahead, Grania.
Thank you. I mean, house sales and the pace of house sales, they present challenges to us as a housing authority for a number of reasons. First of all, it reduces social housing stock available, so that makes it very challenging given the numbers I've shown you. But it also, there are without question housing management challenges, but there are also challenges associated with how we improve our stock. And we spoke earlier about energy efficiency. We've some very technical decisions to take around how you improve the energy efficiency of stock when, for example, you might have 10 or 15 homes in a row and we are the landlord for half of them, but it might be every second or third home and we're trying to wrap an envelope around 15 homes. So we've some real challenges ahead, and part of the reason, and I know I've mentioned it twice already, but part of the reason we are quite keen to be able to acquire homes in the right way would be to enable us to answer some of those challenges. So I think, I'm probably already on the record around house sales. It does really present us with huge challenges. And while it's, wonderful for the individual household, the broader public interest does certainly create challenges for us.
Thank you very much. Happy enough. Councillor McElrath, you're the last up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Last but not least, I would say. Listen, thank you to the panel and thank you for your report. Very brief, and it will be brief. And going back to where we started, I think it was Councillor Cosby raised the point about waiting, the numbers we have, waiting list trends sitting there at 4,000 and 646 new units. What I would say to you, and I'm loath to use the word, but I feel we're in a social housing crisis. And I think those figures are masked by the amount of folk that we're pushing into private rents. Not only does that cause a problem where they should really be in social housing, it's causing a financial stress that shouldn't be there because those private rents are increasing by the week as the housing market increases. So it's more a comment and a word of warning, as it were, but I just feel that your figures perhaps don't reflect the true crisis that's unfolding, certainly in the DEA that I work in and the urban area of Portadown, and that's just by way of comment to finish.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come back, Ronnie?
So just very briefly, I mean, there is no question that the gap between demand and supply has grown, is going in the wrong direction, and we have a major structural challenge. And I think everybody on this panel or on the set of tables would strongly agree we need more social housing and at pace. So we're very much in agreement on that. The way in which we determine housing need, we don't just look to the waiting list. So we look beyond that. So I agree with you. If you just took the waiting list as a determinant of need, we wouldn't be going far enough, because you see need much, much further afield than just the number of people who come forward. So we accept that and we're very clear on that. And I suppose that's in a way why we spend so much time undertaking latent demand tests in areas, building and sustaining our relationships with voluntary community sector organisations locally. The most local we can be and the better the data that we have will ensure that we have the best assessment and measurement of needs. So we're constantly always thinking, what are the ways in which we can improve that? So I don't think we're a million miles apart on any of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McElrath. Thank you very much, members, for your questions. And thank you very much, Grania, Colin, John, Mark, for giving up your evening. On behalf of Council, Grania, I would like to congratulate you on taking up your new post and wish you well. But equally, as members have said there, your team throughout the ABC Council have been working well. They're probably one of the better, if not the best, sort of public body that I get in touch with. Whilst may not always want the answer that I'm getting, but in terms of response and working with us, you are by one of the better ones that I work with anyway. So thank you very much, and safe home and stay safe. Thank you. go to the council minutes. Item 2.1, to seek a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of July 2021 be taken as read and approved as a correct record. Proposed by Alderman Burns and second by Councillor Larkham. We all agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 2.2, to seek a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the resumed council meeting held on the 29th of July 2021 be taken as read and approved as a correct record. Again, Alderman Burns and seconded by Alderman Twyble. All agreed? Thank you, members. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor McClelland.
Yes, Lord Mayor, thank you for letting me in. And yeah, it's on the issue that I raised at the last meeting in terms of the boundary signage. And it was just, I wanted to thank council officers for the engagement that I've had with them following that meeting. And, you know, I certainly get the challenges in terms of the land ownership, the sign design and the sign safety and so on. But I think that as a process, this is taken far too long. I think when we have other councils throughout Northern Ireland that have this process quite a bit along the way than we have, I think we need to add some impetus to getting this completed. And I suppose on the specific, I did ask for a list of the 29 sites across the borough that are in question. Now, it might be hiding in an attachment to an email somewhere on my system, but as far as I know, I haven't received it, so perhaps officers could chase that up. And Lord Mayor, the last on the wider issue, you know, I would be happy to propose that a letter be sent from this council to Department of Infrastructure as a way of, you know, giving them a kick up the backside, as it were, to move this process on. So if council think that that would be appropriate, I would be certainly happy to propose. And, you know, Lord Mayor, we really do need to bring this to a conclusion. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor McClelland, I'll second your proposal just to move things along. Spoke to the Chief Executive before this meeting and he will get that information out to you as soon as possible. Okay, thank you. Alderman Spears, go ahead.
Lord Mayor, just in relation to that issue that has been spoke about, the question of road name signs or boundary signs, are these the boundary signs or are they the signs as we enter important places? The 29 signs that have been referred to. I'm not sure how many exit roads there are out of this borough, but I feel that we should have an up-to-date list of the key places. I mean, Portadown, Armagh, Lurgan, various places that are long overdue. They're signs, they're, you know, at the edge of the villages, and I'm no doubt that 29 is not a number that represents what we aspire to. That's all I can say. Maybe Chief Executive can fill us in on that.
In response to Alderman Spears' question, the 29 signs are the boundary signs. The town signs are the next phase of it. So they would be coming after that. So it's trying to get the 29 boundary signs as people are coming from other areas into the ABC boundary. So it's the 29 is relating to that, Lord Mayor.
Well, Lord Mayor, that leads me on to, well, I assume that, but that leads me on to the point where the signs, as we enter the towns and villages, which are important. They haven't been renewed. I mean, there's still Banbridge District Council. If you go to somewhere, you'll see Banbridge District Council on a sign as you approach wherever. And equally, you'll see the same when you approach somewhere in Armagh or no doubt in Craigavon. So there's a fulsome job here, and there had been a number of discussions about this issue, not recently, but in the distant past, as regards getting those signs up, and we're about 6 years in existence. So one would have hoped that we would have been in a position maybe to have had them in place by now.
Lord Mayor, the town boundary signs that Alderman Spears refers to are slightly more challenging. I think some of the examples he has given, to the best of my knowledge, the Banbridge district signs were replaced a very short time just before the new council came into being. So they were refreshed and renewed just ahead of RPA. There are other signs for towns and villages that were replaced as part of other funding programmes, so therefore do not necessarily tie in with the complete branding that council has agreed for the boundary signs. So there are a number of complexities around those as to how that is taken forward. But I think the priority is certainly, as Councillor MacLelland has been raising over the last meeting or two, is to get the boundary signs moving and in and sorted first of all, and then to progress with the towns and villages as quickly as possible after that. But there are some more complexities around towns and villages, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Roger. That was definitely the Premier Council that you were talking about, Alderman Spears. Councillor McNeill.
Some key places that would like signs, if you understand. And
go ahead, Councillor McNeill.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just whenever we're talking about signs and you're talking about all the boundary signs, can you also look into all the signs that are in all our council properties, the likes of play parks, etc., and as I said, all over the whole borough, because you're still going into them and seeing Armagh, the old legacy council, Craigavon, Banbridge. So if that could all be, so if I can propose that that will be done as well, please.
Duly noted, Councillor, and we'll definitely bring that forward.
Thank you.
And then Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Not one to miss an opportunity, and thank my colleague for bringing up us about the boundary signs. But in relation to all the signs into our towns and villages, can I just say that we need to carry out a whole review of all the signs right across this borough. And not only that, when signs are in place, that they're well maintained and looked after. Especially in the growing season, you see signs going into gateways in our borough, grass growing and different things, and needs attention, but it's not being done. I'm not sure if it's all down to the councillor who owns the land or what it's on, but I would think any sign that we are involved in putting up, that we'll follow it up and make sure that maintenance is carried out right throughout the year, and more specifically during the growing season, when I'm sure we've all seen some of the signs going in and they don't give you the best impression. And first impression is always what people take things on going into a town or a village. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson, and duly noted will be put into the report for that. Nothing further, so all agreed for that report. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Okay, take it from the floor now, or as when we come across the item. Okay. Agenda item 5, okay, committee minutes. 5.1, seek a proposer and seconder for the minutes of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee held on the 4th of August 2021 be taken as read and approved on the correct record. And Councillor Lavery, can I get a seconder? Alderman Moutry. Alderman, do you want to come in? Yeah, go ahead. You happy to second? Yeah. No problem. Go ahead. Alderman, sorry, your microphone switched off there.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. When the head of planning gave a report and then answered some questions in relation to what's going on within the planning department at the moment, and Councillor Toman in particular asked some very pertinent questions. Since that has happened, I have had representation within the last month from applicants to planning, from agents, and from indeed objectors to plans that have been put in. And I think there's a major failing within this department in relation to communication, because people are not getting the service that they're paying for, and people are paying for this service. We were told that there were approximately 190 applications made in the last few months, and if that's correct, and I'm sure it is, and it spreads out over the year, we're talking about 2,200 applications coming in a year. Now, 50% of those are people within this borough, and they go away with a bad experience. It doesn't reflect well on this borough. It doesn't reflect well on this council. And I'm making no comments in relation to the performance of any individual planner, because the planning manager did give us some stats around the position that they find themselves in at the minute. But he also said the position was changing day to day and week to week. And in relation to that, I would like an update tonight as to how things have changed and how they have improved or otherwise since this time last month. I have heard recently of an agent who contacted a planner on several occasions, getting no response back, and eventually to be told by the person who took the call that on the planning file it said the planner would only answer to elected reps. So what kind of a message does that send out to people who are paying for a service? There is reputational damaging being done to this council, and I'm asking the chief executive tonight and the director responsible to oversee this and to see what can be done to sort this mess out, because I want us to have a planning service here that we can be proud of, one that's functional and one that's delivering. There are many more factors around this which I could raise and details that I could go into. I don't want to, but I want to have confidence to tell people when they approach me that the issues here are being sorted out and that we're moving ahead. We were told last month that there had been, I think, 3 new members recruited into the planning office. I don't know how many planners there are in the planning office, but I would like to know, so we will know what percentage that is and how much better we are by having 3 new members. I would like a comparator to be made not only with other councils, but with building control within the council. Because when you contact building control, you will be contacted again back, you will be responded to by an officer or by email promptly. And I want to know what's gone wrong with planning, because there's something fundamentally wrong within this department. And I'm asking the chief executive, the director, and the head of planning to work together and to sort this out and bring a report back next month so we can instill a degree of confidence into our constituents. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you very much, Alderman Moutry. Fortunately, the 2 directors are not here. However, we will note your concerns and we will bring that back to the relevant committee, okay?
Thank you, Lord. In that case, then, I will supply the chief executive with a list of detailed questions around it, because I want to have the facts before me before I engage with constituents. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And I think as a member of the planning committee, and no doubt the other members will be looking at the same sort of information to be able to get the best sort of planning committee that we can have. Thank you very much. Are we all agreed? Thank you, members. Apologies, I need a different seconder. Alderman Moutry, you're not on the committee. Oh, Councillor, no, you're. Councillor McLeod. Okay. Thank you. We got our proposed in second. Thank you. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 6, schedule of correspondence. 6.1 to 6.9, correspondence for noting. Councillor Flaherty, go ahead.
I think that's it. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, for letting me in. I just want to refer to item 6.7, as I'm sure none of you will be surprised about. I love the letters. And I just wanted to make reference. I was going to come in earlier with regards to the council minutes, because I did want to put on record my thanks to the Chief Executive for sending the letter so quickly and so expertly. And I do feel that we're getting a wee bit closer to this one and the pressure's building. So thank you very much. And I see we've got an even speedier reply from, well, not the Minister that we wrote to, but I'm not surprised at this stage. She's probably too busy looking down the back of a sofa for the money somewhere. So maybe the next time I will get a response from the Minister. Thank you, members, for all your support over the last month with this issue. And if anyone has any influence here, I'd really urge you to speak to whoever you can. We are nearly over the line with this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Keep the good faith. Councillor McClelland.
Yes, Lord Mayor, thank you for letting me in on it's item 6.2 that I would want to speak to. And I think it's good that we've had a prompt response from the Minister. And I think what's also to be welcomed is the commitment that the Minister is showing in his response to effectively address some of the climate change issues. And I think, Lord Mayor, it's also worthy of note that a fairly recent KPMG report talked about up to 13,000 on-farm job losses and an economic reduction of 11 billion in terms of output. And Lord Mayor, there's only one word that can be used in terms of the outworkings of the private members' bill on our agri-food sector, Lord Mayor, and that is it is devastating. And I think that some members called for common ground to be found between the two climate change bills. Well, I think perhaps the noble Baron Lord John Taylor found himself to be amazed at the attitudes of some of the parties. But anyway, Lord Mayor, it's good that the Minister has responded, and there's one sure thing, that the Minister will stand foursquare behind our agri-food sector and our farmers. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McClelland. Councillor Kyle Savage.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, it's good to see a response from the Minister and that he has taken in what we had raised the last time. And I see there in his second last paragraph where he is engaging with everyone to try and get a climate change bill sorted out. This is important for our agricultural sector right across the board. We have raised that in the past. But let's bear in mind that it's about time that these MLAs start to do a bit of work down there. And bear in mind that some of these MLAs were the ones that brought about the Going for Growth strategy a number of years back, which encouraged the farming community to increase production, to intensify, and to borrow more money. So I want to see this through. I want to see a package put in place for the agricultural community going forward, which is badly needed. So it is. There's a lot of stuff that's going to come out over this next while, technology, and a lot of other stuff that's going to come out that will increase the returns for farming community going forward, and that's what's needed here. But it leads me on nicely, again, the question that I had raised the last time about what we can actually deal with in here, our own council chamber. It's all right writing letters to Stormont telling them what to do. They get well enough paid to do a job, and they should be getting on and doing it. But what about our own in here? Our own council estate, we have 364 buildings with 1,100 hectares of land. What are we doing? It's by time we got off our backsides and started to work for our people here, and something that we can actually do and control. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Savage, and duly noted. Okay, move on to agenda item 7, schedule of documents requiring corporate seal. We have 6 items for approval, 7.1 to 7.6, and I'm going to take a proposer and seconder to take these on block. Can I get a proposer and seconder? Councillor Kevin Savage. Councillor Julie Flaherty, second. Any members wish to speak on any of these items? Happy days. Thank you, members. Agenda item 8, notice of motion. Notice of motion in relation to paramilitary facades, memorials and murals brought to us by the Alliance Party. I'm going to call upon Councillor Lavery to propose.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Members, it has been 23 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, yet we still have to deal with the scourge of paramilitaries. Such groups are involved in all manner of criminal activities, from murder and drug dealing to loan sharking and intimidation. One activity these paramilitary groups use to try to mark territory and intimidate local communities is to illegally erect facades, monuments and murals of a threatening nature. Not only are these illegally erected objects used to frighten residents, they're also used as a recruitment tool when paramilitary groups prey on vulnerable young men and boys when trying to get them to join their organisations. As an elected representative, I have complained to various statutory agencies requesting that these illegal objects be removed, but the response I get back is either that it's not that agency's problem, or yes, agreement that they should be removed, but they say they lack the legislation or political cover to do so. ABC Council is also failing residents on this issue, as under planning enforcement legislation, Council can act to have any illegally erected facade or monument removed. However, in spite of numerous complaints relating to illegally erected paramilitary objects over the past 6 years of ABC Council's existence, not one enforcement notice has been issued. This is a damning indictment of Council's failure to take these issues seriously. For example, if a business were to illegally erect a large advertising hoarding, Council would come down them like a ton of bricks, and rightly so. However, when the paramilitary group does the same, nothing happens. How's that fair? Well, members, I think it's time we took this issue seriously, and as set out in my motion, we must take steps to deal with these illegally erected objects once and for all. I would strongly encourage all members to support the full contents of the motion so we can make progress on this issue. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I formally propose the motion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. I will call upon Councillor Tennyson to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and as someone born after the Good Friday Agreement, I can't help but feel utter despair each time a new mural, memorial or display is illegally erected in our community which seeks to support or glorify a paramilitary organisation. The murals often normalise the criminality of these groups, their suffocating presence 23 years on from that agreement, and the coercive influence they still have over too many of our communities. Organisations which continue to monetise despair through drug dealing, exploitation and extortion. Such displays are not of any historical or cultural significance. Their only purpose is to intimidate, to mark territory and to create fear, to stint our progress towards a more shared, inclusive and truly united community. By challenging these symbols and murals, we can challenge the visibility of paramilitaries in our community. We can peel back the veil of validity that they have enjoyed for far too long. Many residents in our borough feel that they have nowhere to turn and that they're alone in the battle against these displays. They should be long gone from our society, and it is past time that there was a strong, united political response. That includes action from this council, government departments and statutory agencies to tackle illegally erected murals, memorials and insignia. Of course, the FIC report, should it ever be allowed to see the light of day by the First and Deputy First Ministers, may inform a way forward and will no doubt feed into the work of any working group. But residents in our borough are demanding action now. We cannot shirk our responsibilities or kick the can further down the road any longer. We don't need a report to tell us that these displays are wrong and should be consigned to the past. Support for this motion tonight would send a strong message and allow the working group to start initial work to calibrate our own local response and to engage with relevant agencies in order to chart and agree a way forward. It's an opportunity to reimagine and re-image local communities, to work with the community itself to replace images that hark back to dark days gone by with more creative and culturally relevant displays, rolling out murals which enhance community relations, which build reconciliation and regenerate our public spaces through the arts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Loughlin, Councillor Tennyson. I'm going to call upon Councillor McKinstry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And there's been a mural at the gable wall of what was known as Wiley's shop in Mornview since I was a wee girl all those years ago. And there was many other murals in and around Mornview too when I was growing up, but these have significantly reduced in number, and their tone has also changed over the years. And the mural at the end of Wiley's wall has changed many times over the years. The PUL community have worked hard and have made compromises with little reciprocity or acknowledgement of their efforts. They feel that their traditions and their symbols have been eroded and in many terms demonised over the years. The FIT Commission have been working on this issue since 2016 as part of the Stormont House and the Fresh Start agreements. And this report, which I feel is actually needed, with all its recommendations, has yet to be published. With the absence of this report, I don't feel that council should act as arbiters to the appropriateness of these murals or memorials, or the enforcers of the removal of any murals. I would therefore like to propose an amendment to this. I would like to propose an amendment to this. And it reads like this, where it finishes, in order to proactively tackle this issue, Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Borough Council, and then this is the amendment, calls on the Executive Office to publish the report produced by the Commission on Flags, Identity, Culture and Tradition, in which all 5 executive parties were represented, and to write to the Justice Minister, who heads a political action group as part of the Executive's programme for tackling paramilitarism, criminality and organised crime, to seek an update as to any discussions the task force has had on such matters, which will help inform council policy as to actions it can take to deal with these issues. Going forward, these discussions should proceed through the appropriate existing structures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKinstry. Do you have a seconder for your proposal? Second by Councillor Nicholson. Okay. Councillor Tennyson, go ahead.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I'm just conscious that that was quite a lengthy amendment, and the proposer and seconder, as proposer and seconder, we didn't actually have sight of it in advance of the meeting. So would it be possible to see the text of that amendment? I think that would be quite helpful.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Apologies,
Councillor McKinstry,
if I missed that.
Does any other political parties want to see sight of the amendment? See it. Councillor McKinstry, who all of you sent it through to? You send one to a representative from the SLP and a representative from Sinn Féin as well, saying they can forward. Thank you. Members, I'm going to call for a 5-minute adjournment. I'm happy to propose. Can I get a seconder? Second by Councillor Cosby. Thank you. See you in 5 minutes.
Mine's running out of charge.
Can I call for the audio feed to be paused?
I'm looking at the charge. So my machine's running out of charge.
Ready to rock and roll? Can I ask ACT to turn on? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, members, and welcome back. Can I ask Councillor Lovely, do you accept the proposed amendment?
Hello. Thank you, Lord Mayor. No, I've had a look at the amendment, and thanks for Councillor McKinstry sending it through, but because the amendment removes the aim of removing all of these elected or illegally erected objects, because the amendment removes the part about community consultation about potentially re-imaging, and because, quite frankly, Lord Mayor, the current structures aren't working. We need new thinking, we need new structures to try and drive this through and create positive change. So, I mean, and some parts of the motion, I do have sympathy for in terms of writing the Executive Office and encouraging, the publication of the FIC Commission. So if Councillor McKinstry maybe would want to add that sort of as a supplementary line at the bottom of the motion in terms of encouraging the publication of a FIC report, I'd accept it, but the current amendment as sort of proposed, I sort of wouldn't accept, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lovely. We have a proposer. Do you want to come in, Councillor McKinstry?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No, I want to leave my amendment as it sits and put it forward. I've thought long and hard about this, and I have consulted with many of my council colleagues here, and they feel the same.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McKinstry. We have a proposal and a second from proposal by Councillor McKinstry and second by Councillor Nicholson for an amendment. Councillor Lovely, do you want to sum up? Go ahead, Councillor Cosby.
Sorry, Lord Mayor. I hadn't actually wanted or intended to speak on this notice of motion until I happened to see Armagh this evening when the publicity for this stunt had already been launched before the meeting, which almost tried to predetermine the outcome. And what we have seen since then is a scramble from the Alliance Party to try and change the amendment again. But from a position of weakness, again this evening, they are going to lose on this one, I suspect. Now, that said, in relation to the motion that was brought before us, I have to say, whilst it may well be, from the Alliance Party's point of view, well-intentioned, it certainly, in my view, is reckless, because having been involved and engaged in working with communities for quite some time on these issues and re-imaging issues with Housing Executive, with Council, with other government departments and agencies, we know that it is not diktats from local government, from politicians and from others that achieve results in communities to have these things removed. It is grassroots support and trust that is built up through a process of work, and this notice of motion ignores all of that. And so I would see it as being a reckless notice of motion that is nothing more than headline-grabbing electioneering from the Alliance Party, and so therefore I was pleased to see the amendment coming forward from Councillor McKinstry, and I'd be happy to support her with that. But what I will say is this, that if Council and elected members think the way of achieving results in these types of issues, singling out one identity over another, because we know the photographs were taken in Mournview, that this is very directed at Mournview specifically, with the deliberate exclusion of the IRA memorials that adorn Lurgan and other places across this borough, the illegal ones, of which there are many, and murals and other such things. When it ignores those as well, we set up what appears to be a one-sided process, and I don't think that that's the appropriate way to move either, and I think the Alliance Party should also reflect on that point. So I will be supporting the amendment, and I thank my colleagues in the Ulster Unionist Party for bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cosby. Councillor Lovely, do you want to wind up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, I feel that I'm entitled to respond directly to some of those remarks just made by Councillor Cosby. For a start, this isn't directed at one group, it's directed at all paramilitary crime organisations. I won't rid them all, Lord Mayor, I won't settle just one or two. I want them all gone. In terms of reckless, it says about not engagement with the community. There in the third paragraph of my motion, which may be amended, it talks about community consultation, because community consultation has to be at the heart of this matter. In fact, I think if they were to do some honest community consultation, I think we would find all communities want to release illegally erected paramilitary objects. In terms of a predetermined outcome, do I want them all removed? Yes, I do. I make no bones about it. And it's there in the second line of my motion, which is going to be amended out. In the terms of, Alliance Party are going to lose in this one, the only people who are going to lose are those local residents who live in areas and have to look at these images of hate every day. These residents have been kicked around long enough for 25 or 23 years since the Good Friday Agreement, and this amendment will only kick this issue into the long grass further. So, Lord Mayor, I've got nothing more to say. I would hope, and I would really hope, that even if this amendment does go through and that consultation does happen and whatever these existing instructions are, that members take this issue seriously and we can get that place where all these legally erected paramilitary objects are gone for good. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. The question now be put to the amendment by Councillor McKinstry, second by Councillor Nicholson. Are we all in agreement? No, not agreed. Okay, so we go for a vote. Excuse your titles, okay? I'll go for just your surnames unless you have yes, there's a couple of yous about the place. Okay, so Alderman Anderson, yes, no, abstain. Councillor Baxter, Barry, Alderman Burns, Cosby, Duffy, Flaherty, Greenfield, Hockey, Hawkins away, Keating, Kennedy, not here, Larkham, Lavery, say again. Councillor Macaulay, Michael, McLinden,
Yes, Lord Mayor.
McClelland, McGowan, McElrath, McKinstry, McNally, McNeil,
Yes, Lord Mayor.
Mitri, Nicholson, O'Neill, Pope, Rankin, no. Councillor Kevin Savage, Councillor Kyle Savage, Spears, Tennyson, Tinsley, Toman, Twyble,
Yes, Lord Mayor.
Wilson, Alderman Wilson, Councillor Wilson, and Lord Mayor, yes. And the numbers tallies yes, 29, noes, 3s. So the amendment passes. So can I get a proposer and second for the substantive motion for Councillor McKinstry's? Councillor McKinstry. Proposed by Councillor McKinstry, second by Councillor Nicholson. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, members. That was painless. Thank you. Okay. Can I get a proposer and seconder? Or, sorry, wrong. Can I ask the ACT officers to please turn off the audio feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting
can proceed.
proceed with open session. Thank you very much. Agenda item 11, any other relevant business. We have one from Councillor Flaherty, access to changing places toilet in Portadown's People's Park, and I'm going to call upon Councillor Flaherty to speak on this.
Right, thank you very much, Robert. Look, members, I'll be brief because I can see somebody is jittering looking your coffee. But just want to raise a couple of things. Firstly, some of you may know about this issue. I stumbled across this about 5 weeks ago. I'm sorry, Sharon. There we go. Yes, sorry. I'm jumping the gun there. I'm so excited about these toilets all of a sudden. There we go. The joy of high heels, Sharon, I know I've been there. No, I'll be very brief, sorry. I just wanted to get this out of the way. First of all, I want to put in record my thanks to you, Jonathan, because I have had you tormented over this, you and a number of officers, you, Sharon, as well. But I would be remiss of me not to say that this cannot happen again with these facilities. Because in dealing with this, I have emails going back as far as September 18 and 19 regarding disabled toilets being locked because something was damaged or something was broken. That's no different to any other facility. So this cannot happen again. And I do know there's a paper coming to committee, but I will settle for nothing less, and I mean nothing less, than an external door with a radar key. End of story. We cannot have this happen with these facilities. They're too hard fought for. They're too expensive for to be treated with such disregard as if these people, nobody will notice. So that's one. But why I stumbled across that, members, was, and some of my colleagues in Portadown will probably know this, because this again has been going on for a long time, the actual dire state of the toilets in Portadown People's Park. And I want this addressed as a matter of some urgency, and I know yous are. But again, I have email trails going back as far as 18, 19, I'm sure other members do too, where there were lists of repairs to be done, and I can tell you they weren't done. So, you know, I've always been a big advocate for the People's Park. I used it exclusively for children's events when I was Lord Mayor, and I will continue to be an advocate for the shared space that is that park, and I will not let it be run down like this. I will continue to do so. I'm sure other members will as well. And if it's extra support, staff or resources that you need, I suggest we really seriously get down and look at that, because we have a shared space literally on the doorstep of our town centre. Places are crying out for green spaces, and I really am disappointed. But I'm saying that I do want to make the point that you have been so helpful in getting that issue resolved, and I really mean that sincerely from me and for some of the parents who have brought some of these issues to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flaherty. I'm going to call upon Alderman Wilson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. It's just following on from that, and I suppose it cuts across another issue of importance around toilets. And I know in recent times, at the start of the month, a young lady had an issue in Portadown with regards to just basic access to a toilet. And I know Councillor Flaherty has raised the issue in terms of the change in places toilet, and it is good that there is a facility there. We have an issue obviously around the access to it, which I believe has been very the steps to deal with that. The other issue is that I'd like to raise, and this one which was also publicised early in August, was a young lady who had no access to any toilet in Portadown. It was hugely embarrassing for her, as local news outlet reported. She obviously didn't want to be named, we can understand that, but there was also another issue a couple of years back in Rushmere where a lady I was speaking to had also an issue with accessing a toilet, and I point Council back just to December 2019, and I've raised this with the Chief Executive, and he has assured me that he will look into it. But there was the possibility of a community toilet scheme mentioned, where basically in that scenario, a number of businesses would sign up to a service, if you like, where members of the public could access that. I feel there's definitely merit in that. Council could issue perhaps those chronic sufferers with digestive tract issues who require urgent use of a facility, if they're in town, that they would have that access perhaps by a council issued, not a radar key, but some type of legitimately recognised card that they could produce and gain access, where we don't obviously have the situation where normal situations of a child or somebody just needing a toilet forgoes the use of the public toilet and tries to access a business. We know the issues that can present, but I think there is a major issue for someone who suffers from a chronic condition and they're left short in terms of not being able to access, or they're met with a no response from someone in a shop. That's a huge issue. If that a number of people in that regard have helped them through the benefit system and know that they have those chronic conditions and they are experiencing that lack of service, and I think there is a job of work for this council in terms of resurrecting, if you like, that community toilet scheme provision. It's dropped off the radar. I haven't seen it mentioned since I have the minute here from December 19 from Environmental Services, so would really appreciate if we could revisit that and try and get a scheme up and running. We could pilot it somewhere, I'm quite sure, and see how it works. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Alderman Wilson. Don't forget about us parents with young toddlers. Councillor McNeill.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I just want to echo some of the things that have been said. Unfortunately, I can't hear exactly all that Alderman Wilson was saying, but I was listening to what Julie was saying there as well. But I have been working with officers as well over the past few weeks as regards the toilets in Portadown and the providing the facilities for the people. A lot of people are put off from coming into Portadown because of the lack of toilets. That's what I've been told by the people. I did get information from council as to where toilets are available, and unfortunately one of the first ones on the list was Lidl, or Lidl, whatever way you want to pronounce that, on the Armagh Road, and that building is now closed, so that would need to be updated. Also, the toilets in Lidl, the new Lidl building, they're not encouraging people to use them. So, as I said, we'll have to do more work on getting the information out there to the people. And I'm also have been discussing it with the officers as regards access to disabled toilets, and I'm waiting on a report coming back from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Jonathan, do you want to come in and then bring in Councillor Flaherty? Or Sean, sorry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And just picking up Councillor Flaherty's point, we are aware of the issues in relation to the change in place toilets and are looking to put in place a more user-friendly approach through an external door, and we'll pick that up through the maintenance budgets. In relation to the other points that other members have said, look, I'm happy to take that away and look at it and bring an update back.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flaherty, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will be very brief. Thank you for that, Sharon. I know I seem to talk about toilets in an inordinate amount of time. With regard to the toilets in Portadown, there are full-time public toilets open in Portadown, and I will declare an interest if needs be as a board member there. They're open from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday and a Saturday. Perhaps a sign might help, because for some reason people don't seem to know that they're still there. So maybe a nice sign at the end of the road might help, because those are the public toilets. And if I think back to when the tender was going out, one of the criteria was a public toilet had to be 10 minutes of a walk from the town centre, which is the War Memorial. So, you know, when you look at a 10-minute walk from the War Memorial would take you nearly over the bridge. So, and with regards to the scheme, we talked about that at length. Maybe Mr. Parkins will come in here. At length in committee over a number of years. It didn't work out for a reason. And I would suggest that in the times of COVID, it is even less likely that a business with all the best will in the world. I owned a business for a long time. I would be seriously thinking about it if it was me saying, here, how long? These are for my customers or my patients. So I think we're on a road to nowhere with that one just at the moment. That would just be my thought, and I talk about toilets a lot. So maybe Mr. Parkinson maybe come in there and just update how far we did get with that scheme in environmental services. But I would say we're in a hiding to nowhere with that one at the minute with health and hygiene and public safety.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, we did actually raise it at committee quite a while ago when we were looking at toilet provision across the piece. Excuse me. The decision was made by members at committee not to progress with it because the general feeling was that businesses wouldn't want strangers coming into the various businesses, and they were also concerned about the impact on the toilets and the impact on the existing customer base. There was a major discussion around, dare I say this, drunks and drug users as well using the facilities. So there was quite a substantial debate. I will actually pull out the report, Alderman Wilson, so we can get that to you.
Do you want to come back in, Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, I would appreciate seeing the report, for it did drop off the radar, and I know, we have seen the publicity recently, so I'm sure, I like to think we're a positive and progressive council in terms of trying to bring forward solutions to what are very real issues for chronic sufferers of digestive tract issues who don't simply have time on their side when they need an access to a facility. If that was even consulted with local businesses, we don't know what they might say. They may well be quite happy to do so, and I would like that explored if possible. And I'm sure the people who suffer from it would also like that explored.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson, or Alderman Wilson, sorry. We'll move on to Councillor Michael Raff on car parking.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I definitely will be brief. Many of you know that the £100 High Street voucher scheme is going to launch in a couple of weeks' time. And on the back of that, and I'm sure other members maybe here have been lobbied as well, a number of businesses have suggested to me that in line with what we do at Christmas or have done at Christmas, suspending car park charges for maybe a day or two would be a real benefit.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, point of order. It's financial implications, none of the other business shouldn't be allowed.
Just, sorry, hang on. We have spoke about this earlier on, and we have decided to bring it forward. Okay, hopefully at the end it will become more transparent.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and sorry I just cut out at an inappropriate time. There is, my very next words, Councillor Mackle, were that there would be a financial implication with this, regarding suspending the car parking charges. And the reason I'm bringing it under any other business, and I thank the Lord Mayor for allowing it, it is time critical. It is a time critical issue. If we wait to the end of September, full meeting, it'll be too late. So what I'm suggesting tonight, and I've spoken to officers, and if members were happy, that I would be proposing that officers bring a report back through governance, highlighting the issues, highlighting the proposed loss of revenue, and the delegated authority be given to the governance committee to take the issue forward. And that's as brief, Lord Mayor, and as succinct probably as I can put it. Businesses have suggested to me the last Saturday in September, first Saturday in October, when people have just been paid. And it's 145 million being invested in our high street, and I think this council could and should be willing to suggest that we could support something like that on our high streets to revitalise our high streets. So thank you, Lord Mayor, for allowing me to bring that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm happy to second it. I'm just looking across the board here, and everybody seems to be in general consensus with it. We all agreed, yeah. Okay. Members, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your summer. No doubt the sun will come out for the rest of September. Safe home and have a cup of tea. Can I ask the ACT to please turn off, please? Thank you.